Okay, so I was messing around with some 80s inspired kind of tones yesterday, and I ended up using the FRIEDMAN BEOD. Now, I think this is probably where most folks, if you're going for kind of that 80s Marshall tone, that JCM 800 thing, or, you know, a hot rodded Marshall tone, maybe I would suggest that the place to start might be the Placated Dirty. Now, all you're hearing in this signal chain is the amp with everything 5 at 7.5, everything else is at 5. And I've assigned the switches here for these various kind of amp things that are on the real amp: HBE, fat mode, C45 and saturation. We'll just talk a bit about what those do. Down here, the cab that I'm using is the 4x12 Cali V30, 1 inch away from the cone, high cut off, you'll notice. So this is a relatively dark-ish amp. You know, you don't need the high cut, I don't think. Early reflections at 30%. And that's all that we got going on. You'll see the drive is at 7.5. So without much coaxing, you can get it to do what I think of as that kind of JCM thing. Also, there seems to be a bit more brightness, pleasing brightness, and a bit more string noise than some of the Marshall models. It's quite responsive to kind of pickup changes and stuff. So that's kind of my starting point. Now, the HBE, we can listen to what that does. So you could think of that as sort of increasing the gain slightly and more bottom end, right, is what I'm hearing. So you could use something like that for a lead switch even, right? So you could have kind of your rhythm, kick it on, it's got a bit more brightness, a bit more sizzle, a bit more bottom end, a bit more is basically the HBE, is kind of a more button. Now the fat switch, think of like a bass boost. It's adding kind of resonance in the lower end. Now, I don't know if you can combine the HBE and fat. It's kind of adding a lot of that heft thing, but also could get a bit flubby if you're going for these kind of higher gain tones. Now C45 does something a bit different altogether. Sounds to me like it's adding a bright cap or something like that. It's giving you a bit more. So if I was using humbuckers and I wanted a bit more kind of string sound, which I'm not, I'm using a telly right now, but it's kind of adding a bit more dimension to the sound, a bit more of that sizzle. So maybe, you know, if you have this idea that you want this kind of classic Marshall sizzly tone, HBE fat off, C45 on, for a tone that's going to clean up quite well and is going to be quite tight in the low end. I think it's a bit more gratifying than with the C45 off, so that might be the only switch that I might default to being on, because that's quite a useful. Then my least favourite of the switches, you'll hear immediately what this does. It kind of increases saturation, or you know, gain. And also drops the level because, you know, we are pushing it into. So if I wanted to hot rod the amp and have it be even more gain, then saturation on, HBE on. Just a really big sound there. You'd want to compensate for that saturation switch with a volume though, because obviously me it's like a fairly pronounced volume drop. You could also use that, I guess, as the opposite of a lead boost, so you know, you could have the saturation on for your rhythm. And then jump out of it for your kind of lead tones. I didn't think I really liked this amp model. I've kind of changed my mind. If you just get used to what these switches actually do, you can get so much mileage out of this amp model. And they do really make a marked difference to how the amp plays, how it feels. But that's kind of where I would start with that. Start with that. Everything at 5, maybe C45 on if you're going for a bit more of a classic Marshall-y thing with a bit of sizzle, a bit of that gank thing. And then the cab that I like for it, the 4x12 Cali V30, early reflections up. You don't need that high cut in my opinion, because you want some of that sizzle in there if it's a Marshall thing. But that's where I would start for Marshall tones. Higher gain Marshall tones on the Helix or HX Stomp or Pod Go. It's all about placated dirty. Let me know if you want me to drop this into the folder, because I think it might be a useful kind of preset to start from. It's also got some cleans. But yeah, I'll catch you in another video soon. I hope that was not an entire waste of your time. And yeah, let me know if you want me to drop this preset into the folder, and I'll be happy to do so. I could equally make a little stomp version which does something similar with the switches. We could probably put the main ones that I like on there, the HPE, the C45, and maybe the fat switch. But yeah, cheers.